Welcome to the podcast. I'm taking you guys through an ego death that I went through. I did a mushroom trip yesterday. So if you're not a psychedelic fan, or if you're against psychedelics, you're probably not going to like this podcast. And I'm going to be sharing with you my takeaways from a personal level and some really epic downloads around an ego death, what an ego death is, what trauma is, how to heal it, how to integrate it, and just some personal breakthroughs that I really had, because I think there may be some lessons in there for you guys. And I hope you guys enjoy. So this will be a bit of a chaotic podcast. I'm just honestly going to flow because I literally did it yesterday. So my mind is, I feel super sharp, sweet, but the lessons are still dropping in. I'm still syncing with them. So honestly, I'm doing this podcast a lot to articulate and actually streamline my downloads and my breakthroughs. So with that being said, I'm just going to rock and roll. I've got about 4 notes here. So let's kick it off. So firstly, an ego death. I certainly had one yesterday. So I just want to teach that because I had a really awesome download of what an ego death is. So let's break this down. Ego, in my definition of what an ego is, your ego is the identity of who you believe you are, the identity of who you see yourself to be. It's all of your thoughts, it's all of your memories, it's all of your perceptions, your judgments, everything inside of here, inside of your mind, is your ego. People get triggered and get like angry or think that that's your ego. That ego is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just the identity of who you are. But there's limitations with an ego, right? You can have wounds, traumas, limiting beliefs, all this good stuff. So just think of, I like using a phone as the analogy. When you have a phone or a computer, it comes with default programming. The programming is the ego, but you can download viruses onto the computer, onto the phone. Those are limiting beliefs. Those are traumas. Those are projections. Those are things that would not serve you. So when you do inner work, essentially what you're doing with inner work or healing or whatever it may be, you're actually identifying those viruses or those limiting beliefs, those traumas, those triggers, those projections, and removing them. So that's essentially what the ego is in my view. So when you go through an ego death, so an ego death for me is when you have a significant shift and a lot of your beliefs shatter and change or dissolve, and you step into your ego changes essentially. So you're just getting rid of beliefs, shattering beliefs that you thought were true. And this is the slippery part of the ego. Your ego has 2 main traits. Number 1, it's going to prove itself right. And number 2, it's going to avoid pain. Those 2 traits are very slippery. As an example, it's going to prove itself right. So whatever limiting beliefs or beliefs that you have, you're going to make them true, even if they're limiting. If you believe you're not worthy of love, that you're not enough, that you're not good with money, that relationships are painful, that you're not worthy, that you're not whatever, you're going to make that right. You will sabotage things. You won't put yourself out there. You'll find evidence to prove that belief right. So it's very sabotaging. And the second part, it avoids pain. And this is where you're going to avoid your limitations, your traumas, your wounds, because it's painful. The ego wants to avoid pain. It's a survival instinct. You want to survive, right? So very, very slippery. But the analogy that really dropped in for me yesterday is think of the ego as a jar. So think of like your ego is like this big jar of your beliefs, identity, judgments, trauma, all the above. Think of a jar and you're in the jar. The challenge is you can't see outside the jar whilst you're in the jar. So when you experience an ego death, it's like you're stepping out of the jar. And it sounds really simple because I'm going to share with you guys some of my ego deaths and breakthroughs because they sound so simple. But the challenge with this type of work is you can't see the forest through the trees. When you're in the jar, those are your limitations. You can't do this. You have to do this. You should do this. You can't do this. You've got all these limitations and beliefs that are keeping you in your fucking jar. So a lot of my breakthroughs that I'll share with you, they're so like simple, but it's so hard to get to that point because you're in the jar. Every single person right now, you listening to this, me and everyone, we are in our own jar. We're in our own reality. We're in our own world of our ego, which creates our world. You don't see things the way they are. You see things the way you are. So your external world is a projection of your internal world, your mind, your beliefs, your ego. So essentially for me, experiencing what people term as an ego death, it's experiencing what life is like outside of the jar, which I'll come back to. I'll share some examples. I got like 2 or 3 ones that were really powerful for me. Hope that made sense. So we'll come back. So I had an ego death. That's what an ego death is. And I'll share with you some of my specific ones that I had. Next lesson is I got some awesome clarity on what trauma is and how to articulate it. I've done a ton of self-growth this year, especially ton of events, certifications, books, podcasts, ton of self-growth this year. And I just had some awesome drop-ins of how to articulate trauma. And I'm going to do it for you right now. So if you want to understand trauma, triggers, wounds, and the importance of working through them, enjoy this section. So stay with me for this one. Trauma is a moment in time when something was too much or not enough. However, it will be a specific word. It will be an action, an inaction, a character trait, a behavior. It is something that someone did or something someone did not do that was too much or not enough. And in that moment of trauma is where you split your consciousness. You split to the conscious and the unconscious. If something was bad, so I'll use an example so you guys can play along. Let's use rejection because it's a common one. I find most people have a wound around rejection. So a moment in time, which was too much or not enough, let's use rejection. In that moment, you split your consciousness. You become conscious of the downsides and you become unconscious of the upsides. And that becomes the trauma or the wound. And this is where it gets fucking very slippery. This ties to the ego. The ego wants to avoid pain. Past hurt creates future fear. So you have something in your mind called the reticular activating system where you're going to find things that you deem as important. Okay? So how does that work? It's like when you want to buy a new car or you buy a new car and you see the car everywhere. Or you want to buy the new shoes, you see the shoes everywhere. You really want to go traveling and you see all these things about traveling. You find things that you deem as important, but it works in the reverse. That moment in time when something was too much or not enough, that trauma was bad, it was painful, it shouldn't have happened, it was hurtful. That's something you haven't healed through. Now, because your ego wants to avoid pain, you're going to try avoid it. You're going to try not look for it. But it doesn't work that way. If I told you don't look for a yellow bus, what the fuck are you thinking about? A yellow fucking bus. So you're going to be trying to not look for rejection and therefore looking for rejection and attracting rejection. And it gets even slipperier. You have three things. Trauma, the moment in time. You have a coping strategy, which is the second thing. A coping strategy is what you do to overcome or deal with or hide the trauma. Some examples of coping strategies. You get angry. You snap. You disassociate. You shut off. You're a people pleaser. You overwork. You smoke drugs. You drink. You buy a lot of things. There's many other ones, but those are some common ones. And then the third part is a trigger. So a trigger reminds you of the trauma and activates a coping strategy. Okay? So let's go back. So you've got a trauma that you're trying to avoid. But what you do is you end up attracting it because you're trying to not look for it. And then when you perceive it, it triggers you and activates a coping strategy. Can you see how slippery that is? So until you heal through trauma, which is essentially integrating that conscious and unconscious split. It's going back to that moment in time when something was too much or not enough and actually integrating that wound. And for people that have worked with me or do work with me, it's finding the balance. It's integrating finding what the downside was and bringing it back up, or finding the upside and bringing it back down. And once you integrate and balance that trauma or that wound, the wound is not there anymore. And I've done this with clients and it works. I haven't found a client that it doesn't work with. I've helped clients who have been abused, abandoned, rejected, dismissed, criticized, controlled, manipulated, who've been have been raped before, sexually assaulted before, experienced murder before, suicide before. I've taken people through all the above. It works every time, as long as you're willing to do the work and you're ready to do the work. But it's just willing to lean into it with the right tools and consciousness and feel safe and feel guided. That's where you get a coach, someone to help you with it. But it's doing that. And until you integrate that wound, it's going to continue to trigger you. You're going to continue to attract it. And here's another part to it. You'll also shame yourself when you do it. Hear me out. You will shame yourself when you do it. Because the reality is every human being displays every character trait. I've lied before. I've also been honest before. I've been nice before. I've also been mean before. I've been given before. I've also been taking before. I've done all traits, and so have you. So the thing is, if something is bad because it was too much or not enough, and you're trying to avoid it and you're getting triggered by it, when you then do it, because you're going to do it, you're going to shame yourself. And then you'll come up with a strategy to try hide it from others because you're shameful of it. You can see where this gets fucking deep and slippery, right? So the goal is to become aware of where you're triggered, or when you have judgment. Your perception of me is a projection of you. I'm going pretty quickly, so you might want to rewatch all of this. So do this exercise right now. Think of someone you don't like right now. Just think of someone you don't like. Whoever comes up, perfect. Might be parents, might be a partner, ex-partner, might be an ex-friend, someone. Just think of someone you don't like. And whoever came up for you, perfect. Now, in one word, find the thing, the behavior, the character trait, the thing they did, the thing they did not do. Say it in one word. Were they weird? Were they awkward? Were they rude, mean, criticizing, rejecting, dismissing? What's the one thing to describe the thing you don't like about them? And whatever that word is a wound you haven't healed through. It's something you judge yourself for. It's something you shame yourself for. And it's something that triggers you. Isn't that? I find this shit fascinating as fuck. So this is where you will attract people and circumstances to reveal where you have not healed. So here's my gift for you, my opportunity for you. Be aware of where you receive reflections or triggers. When you judge someone, you don't like someone triggers you, you don't like someone for some fucking reason, become conscious, don't go unconscious, and get present. What is it about this person? What's the behavior? What's the trait? What's the characteristic? What did they do? What did they not do that I don't like? That's triggering me. Get it into one word. Once you've got that word, you've got awareness. You have found a wound of yours. Then it's like, well, what do I do about it? Integrate it, heal it. You can come work with me. I've got a balancing process. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour to do it properly, 90 minutes sometimes. Go through and integrate it. And because until you do, you'll keep getting triggered by it. You'll keep attracting it. You'll keep shaming yourself for it. Isn't that fucking crazy? Now, I normally don't say this, but I'm going to go even deeper on that. So good luck. Listen up. So we live in a world of oneness and connectedness. Everything is instantaneously balanced and connected and whole. It depends what spiritual beliefs and religious beliefs you got, that might fuck with you. But I believe everything is always connected instantaneously. Everything is always balanced, whole, complete. However, we live life through our senses. Sight, touch, smell, hearing, all the above. We have senses to live life through. However, with our senses, we perceive separation. It's like right now you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, wherever you are. So with your senses, you perceive me wherever I am and you wherever you are. There's separation there. However, we need to live life through duality, through separation, to come back to oneness. Because the thing that triggers you or that you get reflected by, that you don't like, that you judge, is a reflection which allows you to come back to you. It allows you to come back to wholeness. Because when you judge someone, you reflect on someone pisses you off, you don't like them, you're triggered by them, they're reflecting a part of you. It's a part of you you haven't healed through yet. And that reflection and judgment allows you to have the awareness to come back to who you are, to become whole. I love the Statue of David analogy. I use it all the fucking time. Michelangelo, how'd you make the statue of David? It was so beautiful. He said, easy. David was always in the statue. I just removed everything that wasn't him. By being able to have those reflections of judgment, of triggers that reflect a part of you, it allows you to come back to you and remove those parts and heal through those parts that aren't you. I find that shit fascinating. So that was a lot. So rewind that section and listen to that again. But I find that insane. So my invitation to you is to become aware of where you judge people, where you don't like people, where you are triggered. Because when you find the trait, when you find the character trait, when you find the behavior, when you find the action, the inaction, that is a wound of yours. That is a trauma of yours. That is a judgment of yours. It's a disowned part of who you are. And that's the gift for you to take that reflection and to integrate that part of you so you become more whole. Oh, isn't that epic? I fucking love that. So that was a huge download for me yesterday. Let's keep rocking. What else we got? So going back to the jar, the ego, the jar, I was in my jar. So the experience of getting outside of the jar allowed me to really have a good reset. So for me, honestly, I just found myself that I was really comparing myself to others. And I literally teach not to do this, but I was doing that because I'm in my jar. I'm in the forest. I couldn't see the trees. Sorry, I couldn't see the forest because I'm in the trees. I couldn't see it. So it allowed me to actually step out and take some like self-reflection, outside objective reflection of how am I going in life? Where am I going? And I just honestly felt like I was comparing myself to others and how other people, other coaches, build their business. And I was like, oh, but I have to. I've got to build a business like this. No, you fucking don't. No, you don't. Whoa. It's like, I know it sounds, I was going back to the jar. It's like, when you're in the forest, when you're in your jar, when you're in your ego, when you are in your beliefs, you can't see from the outside looking in. Doing something like a psychedelic trip or having a coach or doing meditation, you don't just have to do psychedelics, obviously. There's many ways you can do it. But being able to actually step out of the jar and look from the outside looking in, it just allows you to like look objectively of like, wow, I don't actually have to live life like that. Whoa, what a fucking concept. What a crazy fucking thing to imagine, right? Because I was like, I have to do this. I got to do this. I should do this. I have to build business like this. I have to have a life like this. Well, guess what? You don't. Whoa, isn't that crazy? So I was like, okay, well, now that's the case. How would I want to? What do I be inspired to do? What is a amazing, inspiring business for me to give the impact and transformation to the world? What does that actually look like? And why don't I just do that? So that, I know it sounds simple, but that was a really big, like, just breakthrough for me because I stepped out of the jar. I'm like, okay, I don't have to build a business like this person. I don't have to be who that person is. Yes, I can take lessons and inspiration from those people, and there's skills I can gain from those people, but I don't have to do what they're doing. I can do things the way I want to do things. Whoa, what a concept. Holy shit. Wow, crazy. So that was a big like light bulb for me because it allowed me to step out of the jar. Honestly, this was a big personal one. I had a lot of fear around being a parent. So me and my wife, Georgia, we've been discussing parenting and getting ready for kids, and we're actually, preparing for that. We're going to start trying for kids next year. And I honestly was just avoiding the conversation, not avoiding the conversation. I was avoiding the discomfort I had around it. And there's a great quote, I forget who says it, but all fear is the fear of feeling. Let me say that again. All fear is the fear of feeling. Whatever you're fearful of, you're not fearful of the thing. You're fearful of the feelings that come along with the thing. It's like, say, having a tough conversation with someone, breaking up with someone, leaving someone, firing someone, whatever it is. It's not doing the thing that you're afraid of. It's the feeling that you think you're going to feel or you're going to make the other person feel from doing it. So for me, it's like logically I can understand why I want kids, but I definitely had some resistance to doing it. And I actually just allowed myself to feel those feelings and actually feel that the nervousness of like, holy shit, like I've never been a parent before. How do you parent properly? All that stuff. And I'm reading books right now of parenting and starting to learn things around it. But yeah, just honestly, it was a personal thing for me. It's just like, holy shit, I actually have a lot of fear around becoming a parent. So I've spoken to my wife since yesterday, and we had a really beautiful conversation. And there's some things that I'm going to sort out and prepare for that chapter of my life. But yeah, just overall takeaway is I had a lot of fear around becoming a parent. So that's something for me to journey and to look into and to feel into and get prepared for, because I'm excited for it. But yeah, there was a lot of fear around it. So that was a bit of a personal takeaway. And the last one that I wanted to just share, Georgia probably won't watch this, but I love you, Georgia, is I just felt so much love for Georgia. I was mid-trip, so I was like for people who haven't done a mushroom trip before. So I put a mask on, so a blackout mask, so you can't see anything. And I play frequencies, so I just have like a playlist of like different frequencies playing, so it just sort of activates different parts of your mind. And I had my window open. I'm just in my bed, under the blankets, just dropping in, letting everything come through. And I had the window open, and I just heard Georgia, my wife, downstairs outside with the dogs. We got 2 dogs, and she was just like being really cute with them, just being really playful and loving to them. And I just like felt so much love and like just gratitude and open heart for her. And I just had all these tears and love flow through me for her. So that was just a beautiful moment for me. So that's all my takeaways. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you got some value from this, I'd love to know your takeaways and comments down below. There's going to be a lot of shifts for me moving forward. I'm going to be changing the way that I post content, the way that I teach my stuff, the way that I engage with people, the way that I run my business, the way that I help my clients. So yeah, I had a lot of shifts. The ego death happened, and I stepped out of my jar to actually reflect on who am I, where do I want to go, what's true to me, what's my truth, what do I want to do, what do I want to create based on me, not based on other people. So it was really powerful. I'm glad I did it. I haven't done one in about 6 or 8 months, so I really enjoyed it. So thank you for listening. Hope you got value from it. If you're interested in working with me, there's links down below. Check it out. I have a book coming out. The book's behind me, The Inspired Life Method. It might be out by the time you're listening to this. I love you guys. Speak to you soon. Bye.